The tension snapped through the dining room like a sudden jolt of electricity. The family had barely settled at the long oak table when Henry, the 78-year-old grandfather with soft white hair and kind, weathered eyes, stepped aside near the kitchen doorway and gestured gently toward Emma. "Ladies first," he said, smiling the warm, old-fashioned smile he always carried. But instead of stepping forward, Emma froze. Then she laughed. Not softly, not politely. She tilted her head, crossed her tattooed arms over her chest, and let out a sharp, mocking scoff loud enough for the entire table to hear. "Oh, come on, Grandpa. Ladies first? Really?" Her pink hair fell over her cheek as she shook her head. "Do you have any idea how outdated that sounds? That's the kind of thing people said before women had rights." Forks paused mid-air. Glasses stopped halfway to lips. A thick silence swallowed the room. Henry blinked, his smile fading as quickly as a candle in the wind. I'm sorry, dear," he murmured softly, lowering his hand. "I didn't mean—" Emma cut him off with a dramatic wave. "It's fine. I'm just saying we don't need these patriarchal phrases anymore. They're microaggressions. They reinforce gender roles. You can't keep acting like it's the 1950s. Her voice carried through the room, slicing the air with a mixture of irritation and superiority. She wasn't yelling, but the sting behind her words was sharp enough to leave a mark. Her cousin stiffened. Her aunt shifted uncomfortably, adjusting the napkin on her lap as if the fabric could protect her from the growing discomfort. Her grandmother stared at her glass of water, her lips pressed tightly together. And Henry just stood there, shoulders slightly hunched, the warmth drained from his eyes. "I didn't mean anything harmful," he said quietly, voice trembling in a way Emma didn't seem to notice or didn't want to. She shook her head, still half laughing bitterly. "You always say that, Grandpa. Didn't mean anything. That's how these little habits survive, people making excuses for them." At that moment, the room seemed to fold in on itself. Even the air felt still, as though afraid to move. Henry slowly returned to his seat, lowering himself with a quiet heaviness that Emma didn't register. She remained standing behind her chair, arms crossed, taking a small victory in having challenged an old idea. But the victory felt hollow. Even she sensed the imbalance in the room, though she didn't dare acknowledge it. Then from Emma's left, her uncle cleared his throat softly. Barely a sound, but enough to make Henry look up with a weak smile, as if grateful someone had offered the smallest gesture of normalcy. The meal resumed, hesitantly. Plates were passed with stiff hands. Silverware clinked softly, trying to pretend nothing had happened. Emma sat down finally, exhaling through her nose, still fueled by the heat of the moment. She didn't look at her grandfather. She didn't need to. In her mind, the message was clear. Someone had to correct old ideas. Someone had to say something. But deep beneath that conviction, somewhere she refused to reach, something unsettled her. The way Henry's eyes had dimmed, the way his smile had crumbled. It wasn't guilt, not yet. Just a strange, uncomfortable tug. As the first minutes of the meal passed in awkward silence, Emma pretended not to notice the shift in the room, pretended not to notice the pain behind her grandfather's lowered gaze, pretended because she didn't yet know what was coming. She didn't yet know the reply that would silence the entire table. Emma stabbed her fork into the mashed potatoes with a little more force than necessary, still replaying her own words in her head, not questioning them, but fueling herself with the certainty that she had done the right thing. Someone had to challenge old habits. Someone had to point out the microaggressions no one else dared to name. But despite this inner fire, a strange heaviness settled over her, a quiet she didn't like. Across the table, Henry barely touched his food. He sat with his back a little more hunched than usual, his hands folded neatly on his lap, thumbs rubbing nervously together. His plate remained mostly untouched, the steam rising and fading while he stared at it as if it belonged to someone else. Emma noticed briefly, but dismissed it. He was probably just embarrassed. He'd get over it. People always did. Her aunt broke the silence first. "So, Work, Emma. How's that going? Emma shrugged. Busy. Activism isn't exactly a part-time job. Her uncle nodded politely, but the air still felt stiff, unnatural. Conversations didn't flow. They stumbled. They started and died in seconds. The clash from earlier still lingered in every corner of the room, clinging to the edges of the table like fog. Emma pushed a carrot around her plate before glancing at her grandfather again. He wasn't looking up, not at anyone. His eyes were distant, lost somewhere she couldn't reach, or maybe somewhere she had pushed him. For a moment, something inside her flickered. Not remorse, but curiosity. Why was he so quiet? Usually he filled these lunches with stories, gentle jokes, warm smiles. Today there was only silence, a silence with weight. She rolled her shoulders back, trying to ignore the strange tightening in her chest. "Grandpa, it wasn't personal," she finally muttered, more out of discomfort than compassion. "I'm just saying we need to break these old habits. You know, evolve." Henry slowly lifted his eyes to her. They weren't angry. They weren't offended. They were sad, deeply, heartbreakingly sad. "I understand," he said softly. Emma frowned. His voice sounded thinner than usual, fragile, like old paper. She wasn't sure why that bothered her. Maybe because she was used to him being steady, solid, reliable. "Well," she said, forcing a shrug. "I'm just trying to educate, that's all." Henry nodded, still calm, still quiet. "I know you are." The way he said it, gentle, accepting, almost resigned, made Emma shift in her seat. She took a sip of water, hoping the cold would settle something inside her. It didn't. Her grandmother broke her silence then, setting down her fork. "Henry," she said softly, "you don't have to stay quiet." Emma stiffened, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. Why would he need encouragement to speak? He could defend his words if he wanted to. She hadn't silenced him. Had she? Henry looked at his wife, then at Emma, inhaling slowly. "Emma," he said, his voice steadying just a little. "Would you really like to know why I said ladies first?" Emma blinked, taken aback by the question. The whole table seemed to stop breathing. She lifted her chin, trying to sound unaffected. "Sure," she said. "If it's not too patriarchal to explain." Her grandmother shot her a warning glance, but Henry didn't react. He simply folded his hands on the table and let out a long breath, one that trembled at the end. "I didn't say it because of tradition," he said quietly, "or because I think women are weak, or need protection. I said it because—" He paused and his voice cracked, just slightly. "Because it's something your grandmother used to say, and every time I repeat it, I remember her." Emma's fork slipped from her fingers, clattering loudly against the plate. Henry continued, eyes distant, soft, aching. "I say it because it reminds me of the woman I loved more than anything in this world." Silence. Heavy. Unforgiving. Emma felt something inside her chest twist sharply, stealing her breath. Henry blinked, the emotion in his eyes no longer restrained. And losing her once was enough. I don't want to lose the memory of her too. The table fell completely still. Emma didn't speak. Couldn't speak. Because suddenly her grandfather's harmless ladies first didn't sound like a microaggression. It sounded like grief. It sounded like love. It sounded like a man holding on to the last thread of the woman he'd spent a lifetime cherishing. And Emma, for the first time, felt her certainty falter. The words hung in the air like a fragile glass ornament, floating between them, impossible to ignore and far too delicate to touch. Emma stared at her grandfather, her breath trapped somewhere between her lungs and her throat. Her earlier confidence, the sharp remarks, the certainty in her tone, the righteousness she clung to, all of it flickered and dimmed under the weight of his confession. Henry didn't look angry. That almost made it worse. He just looked tired, and heartbroken, and unbearably human. Emma shifted in her chair, suddenly aware of how loud her pulse sounded in her ears. The heat in her cheeks spread down her neck as her family sat frozen around the table, waiting, not for another argument, but for something far more complicated. Her grandmother reached over and placed a gentle hand on Henry's, squeezing softly. "You can tell her, dear," she whispered. Henry nodded slowly and looked back at Emma. "I met your grandmother when I was 22, he began, his voice trembling but steady enough to continue. "She was the kindest person I'd ever known, stronger than me, braver than me, and stubborn enough to make the whole world bend when she believed in something." Emma felt the sting in her eyes before she could blink it away. "She used to say," Henry continued with a faint smile, "that ladies first was never about placing women above or below men. It was just an everyday reminder to be gentle, to be thoughtful, to treat people with kindness before anything else." He paused, "And I said it today because I still hear her voice whenever I open a door, or sit down for a meal, or start a conversation." Emma pressed her lips together, trying to stop the ache rising in her chest. "Even when she was sick," Henry whispered, his voice breaking around the edges, "she would smile and say it. It became our thing, our little ritual, a habit full of love, not patriarchy, not dominance." He shook his head, tears gathering slowly. "Just love." A silence deeper than any argument settled across the table. Emma's hands tightened around the edge of her chair. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Her throat burned with embarrassment, not because she had corrected him, but because she had mocked him without understanding, turning something sacred into something ugly. Her aunt looked down at her plate, shaken. Her uncle swallowed hard. Even her cousin, who usually scrolled through his phone oblivious to everything, sat frozen with guilt on his face. Emma forced her voice out, barely above a whisper. "Grandpa, I didn't know." Henry nodded lightly. "I know you didn't, dear." There was no bitterness in his tone, just truth, and hurt, and a quiet acceptance that made her chest tighten. Emma's grandmother leaned forward. "He still says it because it makes him feel like she's close," she said softly. "Like she never left." Henry smiled weakly, wiping a tear from the corner of his eye. "It's the last piece of her I can still hold on to." Emma felt her eyes burn again, harder this time. She looked away, blinking rapidly, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Her voice shook when she finally spoke. "I shouldn't have mocked you." Henry's face softened with a smile so gentle it felt like a bandage laid over her shame. "You're passionate, Emma. That's not a flaw. You care deeply about things. Your grandmother was like that too." Emma stared at him, stunned. She expected disappointment, reproach, a lesson. But instead, he offered understanding. Forgiveness, immediate, undeserved, unconditional. And that was what shattered her. Her breath trembled, the foundation of her certainty dissolving under her feet. She didn't know whether to apologize again, to explain herself, or to simply sit with the heaviness swelling in her chest. So she did the only thing she could. She whispered almost silently, "I'm sorry." The table didn't breathe. No one moved. Henry reached across with his trembling hand and placed it gently on hers. "I know," he said. Emma didn't expect the warmth that spread through her. It wasn't comfort, not exactly. It was something deeper, the beginning of understanding, the painful unraveling of assumptions she didn't realize she had wrapped so tightly around her heart. And as she looked at her grandfather, the soft lines on his face, the shimmer in his eyes, the quiet love behind every word he said, she felt herself shift. Not in ideology, but in humanity. For the first time that day, she didn't see a patriarchal phrase. She saw a man remembering the love of his life. Emma kept her eyes lowered, tracing the faint pattern of the tablecloth as if it could give her an escape from the tightening feeling twisting inside her chest. Shame crawled slowly up her spine. Not the kind that came from being corrected, but the kind that came from realizing she had wounded someone who never intended to hurt her. She could still feel Henry's hand resting lightly on hers, warm and fragile. A hand that had held decades of life, decades of love. And she had dismissed it with a laugh. Her grandmother cleared her throat delicately, her eyes shimmering with a tenderness only age could give. "Henry," she said softly, maybe you should tell her the rest." Henry blinked, almost startled. "The rest?" She nodded. "She deserves to know." Emma swallowed. The air felt thicker now, heavier, as if the walls leaned in to listen. "The rest of what?" Henry sat back slowly, exhaling like he was lowering a weight he had carried too long. The fork in front of him remained untouched, his plate barely disturbed. He placed his hands calmly on the table, though they trembled just slightly. "When your grandmother was sick," he began, voice barely above the hum of the dining room. "She had good days and bad days. Toward the end, mostly bad." His eyes softened with a gentle sorrow. But every morning, no matter how weak she felt, she insisted on standing at the kitchen doorway when I brought her tea. His lips lifted into a shaky smile. And every time I walked in, she'd whisper, "Ladies first," even if I was carrying everything, even if she could barely speak. Emma felt her breath hitch. It was her way of saying she wanted to stay herself. Henry continued, "Not just a patient, not just someone fading. She wanted to hold on to her spirit, her dignity." That tiny phrase became her anchor. He paused, blinking back tears. "And it became mine." Emma's throat tightened as her grandmother reached over and gently brushed a hand along Henry's arm. "She taught him," her grandmother whispered, "that kindness is not weakness. It's a choice." Henry nodded. "So when I say ladies first, Emma, it's not about placing you above or beneath anyone, it's just love. It's the only piece of her I can still say out loud." Emma's heartbeat thudded painfully. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Words felt too small for the pressure building inside her chest. Her cousin looked down, his eyes glassy. Her aunt discreetly dabbed at her nose with her napkin. The silence that followed was no longer stiff or awkward. It was reverent, heavy with the kind of truth that forces a person to see themselves from the outside. Emma felt her stomach twist. She had mocked him. Not the phrase, him. She had ridiculed a ritual stitched together from grief and devotion. She swallowed hard, her voice barely steady. "Grandpa, I really didn't know." He nodded gently. "I know you didn't. I thought you were being, old-fashioned, insensitive. All those things I always fight against. And you should fight for what you believe in," Henry replied softly. "The world needs people who care, who question. But sometimes..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes we swing so hard at the idea that we hit the person holding it." Emma looked up sharply, not in anger but in realization. Swinging at an idea, hitting a person. It was exactly what she'd done. Henry leaned forward slightly, his eyes warm despite the pain she had caused. "I didn't take it personally, dear. Not at first. But then I looked at you and you weren't just correcting me. You were mocking something you didn't understand." Emma felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered again, voice thinner this time. Her grandfather smiled softly, lines at the corners of his eyes deepening with tenderness. "You're learning. That's enough for me." Emma forced a shaky breath, the knot in her chest loosening just a little, replaced by something softer, something she wasn't used to feeling. Humility. She glanced at her grandmother, who gave her a tiny, encouraging nod. Not a reprimand, not a lecture. An invitation. An invitation to see her grandfather clearly for the first time. Emma looked back at Henry, her voice trembling. "Grandpa, what was she like? Really like? I mean, the way you remember her." His expression brightened, and for the first time that afternoon a warmth spread across his face that lit the room more than any chandelier could. Oh, he breathed, eyes glistening with memory. She was extraordinary. Emma leaned forward slightly, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but out of genuine longing. For the first time in years, she wanted to listen. Henry's expression softened as he leaned back in his chair, his eyes drifting somewhere far beyond the dining room. It was as if, for a moment, time folded, and he could see the past as clearly as the present. She was extraordinary, he repeated, his voice warming as the memory took shape. Your grandmother. She lit up every room she entered. Not because she tried to. She wasn't the type to demand attention, but because she carried this quiet grace, a kind of confidence that never needed to be loud. Emma slowly straightened in her seat. Something in the way he spoke, gentle, reverent, filled with nostalgia rather than pain, caught her off guard. She taught me everything about kindness, Henry continued. Not the easy kind, where you hold the door for strangers or say please and thank you. The hard kind. The kind you choose even when the world doesn't deserve it. Her grandmother smiled softly, wiping the corner of her eye. Your grandfather chased me for months. I turned him down 7 times before our first date. Henry chuckled, the sound fragile but genuine. 8. It was 8. Emma felt her lips twitch, the slightest smile she had allowed herself since the confrontation. She had standards, Henry said proudly, but when she chose you, she chose with her whole heart. He inhaled slowly, his chest rising with the weight of memory. She always said life was too short to love halfway. Emma swallowed, feeling the words settle heavy and warm inside her. Henry's eyes clouded slightly. When she got sick, she was more worried about me than herself, always asking if I'd eaten, if I'd slept, even when she could barely lift her arms. The room stilled again. Emma gripped the edge of the table, her voice soft. What? What was she like when you first met? Henry smiled in that fragile way people do when they hold something precious. She was 20, wearing a navy dress with little white flowers. I remember because she told me she hated that dress and said it made her look too sweet. He shook his head. But sweet wasn't the word. She was bright, confident. She knew exactly who she was. Emma blinked, surprised. She was confident? Very, her grandmother confirmed with a nod. Henry continued. She challenged me. She challenged everyone. Your grandmother didn't let anyone talk over her. She stood her ground, fiercely, but without tearing people down. Emma bit the inside of her cheek. She always said, Henry added thoughtfully, strength isn't in how loud you are. It's in how much love you can carry without letting it break you. Emma's breath hitched. She said that? Many times, her grandmother replied softly, especially to him. Henry nodded. She'd remind me of it whenever I got too serious, too rigid, too traditional. He gave Emma a gentle, pointed look. She believed in equality just as strongly as you do, maybe more. Emma frowned, surprised. Really? Oh yes, Henry said. But she believed the world needed gentleness too. That kindness wasn't a surrender of strength. His gaze softened. She would have liked you, Emma. Very much. You remind me of her, the fire, the conviction. He paused, his eyes growing glassy. But she would have wanted you to know the difference between challenging an idea and hurting someone you love. Emma's chest tightened painfully. Her grandmother leaned forward. Your fire is beautiful, querida, but fire can warm, or it can burn. Emma looked down at her lap, swallowing hard. Heat rose behind her eyes again, but this time, it wasn't embarrassment. It was recognition. It was understanding. It was the painful realization that she had struck without knowing where the wounds already were. She finally lifted her eyes toward Henry. Grandpa, I never should have laughed at you. Henry shook his head gently. No, dear. You were just trying to defend something you believe in, but I didn't even ask what you meant, Emma whispered. And now you know? he said softly. That's what matters. Emma's grandmother placed a hand on Henry's shoulder. Tell her what you once told me, she urged quietly. Henry inhaled deeply, his voice turning soft as silk. When she died, I promised myself I wouldn't let her fade. That every act of kindness I did would be a way to keep her here, even just a little. Emma felt a tear slide down her cheek. So if saying ladies first makes me feel like she's still beside me? Henry paused, his voice trembling. Then I suppose I'll keep saying it until the day I see her again. The whole table went silent. Not tense, not awkward, just silent in the way people get when they're witnessing something sacred. Emma wiped her cheek, her voice barely a breath. Grandpa, can you tell me more about her? Henry's face softened into a smile that reached every line of his aging features. I'd love to, he said. And for the first time in years, Emma leaned forward, not to debate, not to correct, not to challenge, but to listen. Henry took a slow breath, as if gathering pieces of a memory too large to hold all at once. When he spoke again, his voice carried a softness that wrapped around the room like a warm blanket. Your grandmother loved mornings, he began, his eyes looking somewhere above Emma's shoulder, as if the past were hovering just behind her. The sun wasn't even up yet and she'd open every window in the house. Said fresh air was her favorite kind of prayer. Emma listened quietly, elbows resting on the table, her posture no longer rigid but drawn forward, almost childlike. She used to hum while she made her tea, Henry continued. Always the same tune, a little melody she claimed she invented. But years later, I heard it on the radio. He chuckled softly. I never told her. I liked thinking it belonged to her. Emma felt another small tug inside her chest, a gentle, persistent pulling. Her grandmother brushed Henry's arm lovingly. He married me for that song, I swear. You're not entirely wrong, Henry said with a smile. The whole table softened. A warmth spread through the dining room that hadn't been there when they first sat down. Even Emma's cousin, who had spent most gatherings half distracted, looked fully present for once. Henry turned back to Emma. We weren't perfect, you know. We disagreed. A lot. His smile widened as he let out a breath of fond remembering. She was bold. Oh, she could argue circles around me when she wanted, but she always fought with love. Emma fidgeted with her napkin. What does that even mean? It means, Henry said gently, that she never fought to win. She fought to understand, and to be understood. Emma's breath stuttered. And when I was wrong, Henry added, she didn't mock me or belittle me. She took my hand and helped me see the world through her eyes. Emma's gaze dropped to the table. Shame washed over her again, not because she had argued with him, but because she had done it with sharpness, with dismissal, with pride. She hadn't fought with love. She hadn't fought to understand. She hadn't fought to connect. She had fought to dominate the moment. Henry continued softly. She used to say, Henry, kindness isn't a rule. It's a responsibility. Emma swallowed, her voice cracking. She sounds incredible. She was, Henry whispered, and I miss her every day, saying those little phrases, holding doors, offering my seat, saying ladies first. It's not about being traditional. It's about remembering the woman who taught me to be gentle. Emma pressed her lips together, eyes burning again, but with a different kind of emotion now. Tenderness. Her grandmother leaned toward her. Your grandfather isn't offended by your beliefs, Carita. He admires your strength, but today, your words hurt because you mocked something precious to him. Emma inhaled sharply. I know. And hurting someone you love, her grandmother said calmly, is very different from challenging the world. Emma felt the truth of that settle in her bones. Henry reached for his water glass, his hand trembling slightly. From age or from emotion, Emma couldn't tell. You know. he murmured. Your grandmother would have adored you. You're fiery. She liked fire, said it meant the heart was still young. Emma let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh but wasn't sadness either. I never meant to hurt you. I know you didn't, Henry said gently, and that's enough for me. Emma looked at him, and for the first time she truly saw him. Not the grandfather frozen in old traditions, not the man she assumed held onto outdated ideas, but a widower carrying memories like fragile lanterns in the dark. She whispered, Grandpa, I want to know more about her, about everything. Henry's face lit up, and something inside him, something dimmed for years, flickered awake. I'll tell you as much as you want to hear, he said. Emma nodded, and in that moment the table felt different, softer, closer, warmer. It felt like a place where healing had finally found its way in. And Emma realized something quietly, deeply true. She hadn't just opened a door for him. She had opened one for herself too. Henry's eyes glowed with a gentle light as he leaned forward, fingertips resting lightly on the table as though he were handling something precious and breakable. Emma found herself matching his posture without realizing it, drawn toward every word, every pause, every memory he released into the room. She loved storms, he said, his voice soft with nostalgia. Not the dangerous kind, just the ones with rolling thunder in the distance. She used to sit by the window with a blanket around her shoulders and tell me the sky was practicing its courage. Emma blinked slowly, letting the image settle. Practicing its courage? Henry nodded. That's what she called it. She said lightning was like a reminder that beautiful things can be loud, and loud things can be beautiful. Her grandmother chuckled. She had a way of turning everything poetic, even things that terrified most people. Emma felt her chest warm as she imagined it, a younger version of her grandmother, wrapped in a blanket, whispering metaphors at a storm. It made her seem more real, more human, less like a distant family myth, and more like a woman worth knowing. Henry smiled faintly. She taught me not to be afraid of change. She used to say we all get stuck sometimes, not because we can't move, but because we forget we're allowed to try. He glanced gently at Emma, the message floating between them without judgment. Emma felt it land anyway. Her fingers traced the edge of her plate, not in agitation now, but in reflection. She didn't rush to defend herself, didn't lift her chin, didn't armor her words. She listened. Henry looked down, his thumb circling a small pattern on the wood grain. She also had a strong sense of justice. She wouldn't tolerate cruelty, not even in small doses. If someone was rude to a cashier, she'd step in. If a neighbor needed help, she'd be the first one there. That sounds like me a little, Emma murmured almost shyly. Henry's eyes softened. It is you. That part of you. That's her. The words pressed directly into Emma's heart. She didn't know what to say, so she let him continue. She fought for what she believed in, Henry said, but she always led with compassion. She taught me that when you raise your voice, you should make sure it's lifting someone, not crushing them. Emma swallowed hard. The memory of her earlier laughter echoed through her mind, now sharp with regret. I didn't lift you today, she whispered. Henry reached across the table, his hand trembling slightly as he placed it over hers again. No, sweetheart, but you're here now, and that matters more to me than the mistake. Emma felt heat rise behind her eyes again, but she didn't blink it away this time. Her aunt exhaled softly, relief washing over her features. Her cousin, who rarely showed emotion, cleared his throat as if trying to regain composure. Emma leaned back slightly and looked at her grandfather with new eyes. Grandpa, did she ever say anything about, tradition? About things like gestures? Henry chuckled, a warm, fragile sound. Oh, she used to tease me all the time, told me I held doors open like it was my life's mission. Emma cracked a small smile. But then she'd wink, Henry added, and say she felt cherished, not controlled. Emma inhaled sharply. cherished, not controlled. It hit her harder than she expected, like a gentle truth that had been sitting patiently behind her assumptions, waiting to be seen. Henry's face softened even more as he watched her absorb the words. She believed gestures only have the meaning we choose to give them. Emma lifted her eyes to his. And you chose love. He nodded. Every time. The table felt warm again, alive, connected. Then, in a voice barely audible, Emma whispered, "I wish I had known her." Henry smiled a trembling smile. "She's in you more than you realize." Emma felt her throat tighten. "Do you really think so?" Henry nodded with certainty that seemed to glow from within him. "You have her fire, her courage, her conviction." He paused, eyes watering slightly. "You just need to learn her gentleness too." The words didn't scold, they invited. Emma lowered her gaze, letting the truth settle inside her. Not as shame, but as a gentle nudge toward someone she could become, someone her grandmother would have been proud of, someone she would be proud of. And as the family watched her quietly, Emma felt the first true shift within her, a softening, a settling, a silent promise forming in her heart. She would try. The rain outside the dining room window began tapping softly against the glass, as if the world itself had chosen the perfect soundtrack for the moment unfolding at the table. Emma glanced toward the sound, then back at her grandfather, her breath still uneven as she processed the quiet revelations he had gifted her. Henry reached for his napkin and gently dabbed at the corner of his eyes, pretending it was nothing more than dust. But his trembling hand betrayed the truth. These memories were still alive inside him, still tender, still sacred. Emma watched that small tremor, and something protective stirred inside her. Not the fiery protectiveness of activism, but a gentler one. The kind that blooms when you finally see someone's vulnerability for what it is. A piece of their soul left unguarded. Her grandmother smiled warmly at Emma. "You know, she would have been so proud of you." Emma blinked. "Why? I don't feel very proud of myself right now." Her grandmother shook her head. "Growth isn't tidy, Kirita, and you're growing right now." Henry nodded slowly. "Your grandmother loved people who cared deeply, even when they cared imperfectly." He paused, eyes softening. "Especially then." Emma let her shoulders drop, the heaviness in her chest shifting from shame to understanding. She wasn't used to this kind of confrontation, not the emotional kind, the human kind. She knew how to tear down arguments, how to dismantle outdated beliefs, how to call out injustice. Those battles were familiar, but tenderness, listening, seeing beyond her own fire, those were battles she had avoided without ever meaning to. Her aunt cleared her throat gently. "Emma, can I tell you something?" Emma nodded hesitantly. "When your grandmother got sick," her aunt began softly, "your grandfather changed. He cooked for her, cleaned for her, slept on that tiny hospital couch every night for months. He learned how to braid her hair when her hands were too weak to do it. He'd read her books until his voice gave out." Henry blushed slightly, as if embarrassed by the attention. "I just did what any husband would do." "No," her grandmother said, placing a loving hand on his. "You did more." Emma stared at them, her chest swelling with an ache so deep it almost hurt to breathe. She had never imagined her grandfather as anything other than the quiet man at family dinners, the one with gentle manners and traditional phrasing. But now, she saw him whole. The husband who stayed, the caretaker who never faltered, the man who carried love in rituals so small, the world would overlook them unless someone cared enough to ask. Emma inhaled shakily. "Grandpa, when you say ladies first, do you ever think about changing it? Or does it have to stay?" Henry smiled faintly. "It doesn't have to stay. It only stayed because no one ever asked why it mattered to me." Emma nodded slowly. eyes dropping to her lap. I should have asked. Most people don't, Henry said kindly. Most people react before they understand. It's human. Emma's throat tightened. But I didn't want to hurt you. I know, Henry replied gently. And you didn't hurt me on purpose. You hurt me because you didn't know the story behind the words. Emma blinked hard, feeling another tear slip free. Her grandmother leaned forward. This family isn't asking you to change who you are, only to listen as fiercely as you speak. Emma slowly nodded. Henry smiled softly. Your grandmother would have loved that fire of yours, but she would have nudged you to use it carefully. Emma let out a trembling breath. I want to try to be better with you, to understand more before I react. Henry's eyes shimmered. That's all I could ever want from you. A warm, fragile silence filled the table. The tension that had once suffocated the room now melted into something tender. A fragile bridge, carefully rebuilt from the splinters of misunderstanding. Emma finally lifted her gaze, her voice soft and genuine. Grandpa, could you tell me more about her? Not just how she loved, but who she was. What made her laugh? What made her stubborn? What made you fall in love with her? Henry inhaled deeply, his smile trembling with gratitude. Oh, Emma, he said, eyes glowing. I could talk about her for the rest of my life. And for the first time in a very long time, Emma wasn't correcting him, or debating him, or challenging him. She was giving him the one thing he had been waiting years to receive, her full, open, human heart, and the room exhaled with her. Henry's eyes brightened at Emma's question, as if she had opened a door he thought would remain closed forever. He sat up straighter, the sadness in his expression softening into something warmer, something like gratitude mixed with relief. She laughed easily, he began, his voice steadying with each memory. Not the polite kind of laughter people use to fill silence, but the real kind, the kind that made you feel like the whole room was lighter because she was in it. Emma rested her chin gently on her hand. She had never seen her grandfather look so alive. Each word he spoke seemed to pull both of them into a part of the family history she'd never dared to explore. She was stubborn too, her grandmother added with a chuckle. If she believed in something, she'd hold her ground until the sky changed colors. Emma smiled softly. That sounds familiar. Henry pointed at her with a playful nod. Exactly. You get that spark from her. Emma felt warmth bloom in her chest. The connection, the one she'd spent years believing she didn't have, felt suddenly tangible. But you know what made me fall in love with her? Henry asked. Emma leaned forward. What? He exhaled slowly, eyes softening. She saw people, really saw them. She would notice if someone was sad, even if they were smiling. She cared about feelings no one else paid attention to. Emma swallowed. She had fought for justice, fairness, equality, but seeing people, seeing pain beneath their silence, that felt like a different kind of strength. Once, Henry continued, we were at a bus stop. A man dropped his groceries. Everything spilled. Everyone else walked around him too busy or embarrassed to help. But she knelt down, helped him pick everything up, tied his bag back together, and then talked with him until his bus came. She changed his whole day with 5 minutes of kindness. Emma felt a tear touch her lashes again. I wish I'd met her. Henry reached across the table, laying his weathered hand gently over hers. In a way, you have. She lives in you more than you know. Emma gripped his hand, not tightly but with intention, as if she were anchoring herself to something she didn't want to lose again. Grandpa, she whispered, I shouldn't have mocked you. I let my beliefs scream louder than my understanding. Henry shook his head, squeezing her hand lightly. Your voice is strong because your heart is strong. You just needed to remember the difference between fighting the world and fighting the people who love you. Emma's eyes burned with emotion, but she didn't look away this time. And what you said about Grandma, about keeping her memory alive? Her voice cracked. That touched me. Henry's voice softened. I'm glad. I want you to know her, not just through stories, but through the parts of her that live in this family. Her grandmother smiled warmly. She would have claimed you as her own the second she met you. Emma let out a shaky breath, absorbing the weight of those words. Can you tell me more about her? Something she did when you two were younger? Henry chuckled, wiping a tear discreetly from the corner of his eye. Well, once she made me dance in the middle of the grocery store. Emma blinked. She what? Oh yes, her grandmother chimed in. She was daring like that. Henry nodded, amusement lighting up his wrinkled face. They were playing her favorite song over the speakers. She grabbed my hand, spun me around between the fruit aisle and the canned goods. I was mortified. He laughed softly. But she said life was too short to only dance at weddings. Emma's smile widened, genuine, unguarded, full of affection she wasn't even hiding anymore. That sounds like something I would do, she murmured. I know, Henry said. That's why I'm telling you these things. The table felt warmer now, not from the room's soft lighting but from the love circulating around it. The earlier tension had melted into something far deeper than harmony. It had become connection, understanding, reconciliation. Henry squeezed her hand again. Emma, thank you for listening. Emma took a trembling breath. Thank you for trusting me with this. Her grandmother placed her own hand gently atop theirs. This is what family is, Kirita. Not perfect, not always polite, but willing to learn one another. Emma nodded, her voice soft but steady. I want to learn more. About her. About you. About all of us. Henry's smile carried a brightness she hadn't seen before, not even in old photographs. And in that fragile, beautiful moment, Emma realized something powerful. This wasn't the end of the conversation. It was the beginning of a relationship she didn't even know she wanted. And she wasn't going to waste it. The rain outside grew steadier, a soft curtain tapping against the windows as if offering applause for the moment unfolding inside. The entire dining room felt transformed, not by decor or lighting, but by the slow, steady unraveling of years of distance that had settled between Emma and her grandfather. What had started as a clash now felt like an awakening. Emma took a deep breath, wiping her cheek with the back of her hand before returning her gaze to Henry. He looked lighter somehow, as if telling those stories had peeled away years of quiet grief. A man who walked through life with gentleness had finally been seen for it. Grandpa, she said carefully, I think I've been so ready to correct the world that I forgot the world includes people I love. Henry's lips curved into a smile, small, tender, full of pride. And that realization, sweetheart, is worth more than any argument you'll ever win. Emma's grandmother nodded. Strength isn't only in standing firm, it's in knowing when to soften. Emma looked down, absorbing the words slowly, like tea steeping in warm water. I thought you were just being old-fashioned. I thought I had to challenge everything that looked like tradition. She glanced up. But I didn't stop to ask what the tradition meant. Henry leaned forward slightly. Traditions should be questioned, but sometimes they aren't chains. His voice grew gentle. They're threads tying us to the people we've loved and lost. Emma swallowed hard. The tear she'd kept back finally slid down her cheek. I'm sorry, she whispered. Not the hurried apology of earlier, but one rooted in genuine understanding. Not just for mocking you, but for not trying to see you. Henry reached out, resting his warm, worn hand atop hers again. There's nothing to forgive, Emma. You're learning. I'm learning. We all are. Emma squeezed his hand gently, grounding herself in the moment. I want to know more about her, but I also want to know more about you. Her eyes softened. Not the version I assumed you were, the real you. Henry's breath caught for a moment, the kind of reaction that comes when someone finally receives something they've silently hoped for. "I'd like that," he whispered. The rest of the family watched quietly, touched by the transformation happening before them. Her cousin let out a genuine smile. "This is the best lunch we've had in years." Her aunt laughed softly. "Because no one's pretending today." Her grandmother lifted her glass. "To honesty in tow." Henry chuckled and raised his water glass slightly. "And to remembering the people we've loved." Emma raised hers too, voice steady. "And to learning the stories behind the things we think we understand." Their glasses clinked gently. Not loud, not celebratory, but meaningful. The moment was simple and perfect. As they sat back down, Emma found herself looking at Henry in a way she never had before. Not as a relic of outdated ideas, not as someone to correct or educate, but as a man. A husband who loved deeply, a widower carrying memories like fragile treasures, a grandfather who had always been gentle, even when she hadn't noticed. "Grandpa," she asked quietly, "was Grandma really the one who taught you all those things? About kindness, about courage, about all of this?" Henry smiled with a wistful tenderness. "She taught me everything worth knowing." Emma breathed in slowly. "Will you teach me?" He blinked rapidly as emotion swelled in his eyes. "Yes," he said, voice thick. "I'd love to." Her grandmother leaned back, satisfied. "Look at that. Two stubborn hearts finally listening to each other." Emma laughed softly through her tears. "Guess we both inherited her stubbornness." Henry gave her hand one last squeeze before letting go. And her heart. Emma felt that. Deeply. As the rain began to soften and the dining room slowly returned to gentle chatter, something inside her shifted permanently. Not her beliefs. Those remained strong, important, part of who she was. But now they rested beside something she had forgotten to nurture. Compassion. Curiosity. Connection. She had not lost her fire. She had learned how to aim it. And as she leaned forward to ask her grandfather another question about the woman who shaped him, and now, unexpectedly her, she realized the truth. She hadn't just salvaged a moment. She had rebuilt a bond, one that might have remained shattered if not for a single phrase. "Ladies first." A phrase that now meant something entirely different. Not tradition, not patriarchy, not a battle to fight, but love, memory, and the beginning of healing.